Welcome to the Addison podcast, where we talk about what it actually takes to hit your first six or multi-six figures in business. I'm Addison, certified clinical hypnotherapist and online business coach for entrepreneurs. And 3 years ago, I decided that nursing wasn't for me, dropped out of nursing school, and dove into the online space. From free hypnosis audios to unfiltered conversations and business advice, this is the space for you to take radical responsibility towards creating your dream business. Let's dive in. Hi guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm super excited to chat with today's guest. I feel like this is going to resonate with a lot of people. I've just been having so many conversations, even yesterday on a mindset audit, with someone who is doing very similar to what you did, like service providing, wants to move into more of a coaching role and expand their income and just the fear and stuff behind that. So we're going to talk about everything to do with pivots, whether it's a planned pivot or an unplanned pivot, like a pregnancy or surgery, and how you can navigate that in business, both identity-wise and subconscious-wise, like holding yourself through the fear. So I'm super excited to welcome Aislinn today, who is a former luxury wedding photographer with tons of experience. You were literally in Martha Stewart weddings, which is awesome. That's something I flipped through when I was planning my wedding. So I'm like, that's so cool. But you transitioned to coaching in 2020. So you've been in the business coaching space for a while, and you mostly focus on helping creatives scale their businesses and elevate their mindset. You're dedicated to teaching strategies for success, nervous system regulation, which I love, and the importance of automation in business. And I just want to highlight some of your client results as well, too, before I let you introduce yourself. But you said that you help your clients create 25K months, 5-figure, recurring revenue. And then from what I see on your Instagram as well, too, a lot of the photographers you're helping pivot more into education. So they're getting off of that, like, being, front facing, working with their body all the time, like the tiring aspect that can come with that. And I love that. I love giving other business owners the opportunity to make and expand their income in a lot of different ways. I think it's really empowering. So that's awesome. So welcome. I would love to hear, just because I gave a whole spiel about you before you could even talk. I would love to hear what made you transition from wedding photography to business coaching.
Yeah. Well, hi guys. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Addison. I really appreciate it. So my name is Aislinn. You guys can call me Ace. And I was a luxury wedding photographer for 14 years before I pivoted into business coaching. And there was this season back in 2020 where everyone was in their house and no one was allowed to have in-person events. And we were all in the wedding industry and the event industry just losing our minds, because if you're anywhere in that industry, you have like so much connection based, like everything, like your business is built around connection for the most part and being around people. So during 2020, one of the things that I was really missing was connection with my people and connection with like people that I had wanted to meet who lived in different states than me. So during 2020, I did 77 free coffee dates, where I essentially did Zoom calls. Nobody bought me coffee, by the way. This entire year that I did these coffee dates, no one bought me coffee, but we met on Zoom, and I would just listen to photographers, planners, florists, stationery designers, people who were in my industry. I would just listen to what was going on in their business. And then I would say something along the lines of you could be charging more, or, hey, you can set this boundary, or if it doesn't feel good, why are you doing it? And so these people would walk away from these phone calls and say, oh, I raised my prices, or wow, I feel so much better in business, or I set that boundary that we talked about. And I was like, weird, there's something here. I might actually be good at this. And I had no intentions to pivot into coaching at that time, but that really laid this foundation of I love just being a space to listen to what's going on in somebody's business in the creative world and show them that they can take the shoulds off and show them that they could actually have a business that feels really, really good. And it doesn't have to have this super high, low, crazy nervous system things that like the creative industry can really say has to happen. So that was kind of the pivot into coaching. Was the initial thing was the 77 free coffee dates. And then in 2021, I really hit this point where I was I think I might want to do something else. Like I've been doing this for over a decade, been published multiple times in Martha, Brides, Southern Weddings. Like I could list a lot more accolades than that, but I had already done all of the kind of like things I wanted to do. And I loved my clients, but I just was hitting this point where I was like, I think I have a bigger mission here or a bigger impact here. And I'm just going to play with it and see what happens. So that was like kind of the initial transition in.
Yeah, that's awesome. 77 free coffee dates too. Like
I know. Who was
it's
I?
so
Why was I doing that?
I know, but that's honestly, it's awesome though, because, I think now in the business coaching space, we see, I've had clients that are like, well, this person's making 300K months or whatever. And it's like, but what did they really do to get there and to get that experience and to connect with people? And, most of the people that I talk to that have those higher income months, they have done something like that. They have poured into their community in some way and just said, I don't care that this is so much of my time. I just want to connect with other people and like get some market research and stuff. So I think that's really, really cool. And it seems like it was a natural transition for you too, where you're like, I have this experience. This is working really well. I'm building some confidence. Okay, let's do it. So that's awesome. And I'm sure during that time period too, since there were less weddings to shoot and stuff, that was nice to have a pivot to move into, right?
Yeah. You know, what's funny is that even though there were like technically less weddings, there actually were still a lot of events happening. They were just different. We had micro weddings, we had mini weddings. There were a whole bunch of like really cutesy names that people came up with during that time. Some of my favorite weddings that I did like ever in my entire career had 7 people. And
Oh,
like
wow.
to be one of those 7 people, it's so like I get emotional thinking about it because like what an honor that
Yeah.
like like at a wedding where you have 300 people, like that's still an honor and it's really beautiful. And like I always like had like that deep emotional connection with my clients, but like to be one of 7 people witnessing the beginning of your marriage and then being the one to document it so that you can show it to the rest of the people that you love, like I don't know, there was something really cool about that season.
Yeah, so intimate. That's really awesome. I didn't think about that. I knew people were still doing micro weddings and stuff, and there were obviously stipulations around it, but that is awesome. Super intimate.
Mm-hmm.
So during this time period when you were making this pivot and you naturally were like, oh, I think there's something here. I really like this. Was it hard? Because I know you brought up some identity work piece. Like there was probably part of you that had to let go of the title of photographer or wedding photographer or whatever. During that time, was it hard to like fully lean into that? Like maybe tell us a little bit more about how that pivot felt.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember the thing is that the 3D world will mirror back some of your biggest fears to you.
Oh yeah,
So
for sure.
during that time, I remember like kind of like playing with the idea of like, okay, well maybe I retire from weddings and maybe I do coaching full time. And my mentor at the time was making like she'd had her first $1 million month at that time. And so I was like, I could do this too. Like that's what coaching can do for you. So during that time, I would go to like different like networking events with other photographers and I would tell them like, oh yeah, like I'm shooting my last wedding on this date and then I'm retiring, like I'm not doing weddings anymore. And the amount of people who just like could not like even understand the idea of retiring or the idea of like no longer having that identity of being a photographer. I had so many people who'd be like, oh, I could never do that. And I had so many people who'd be like, but you'll still shoot weddings, right? And I had so many people who just were like, they couldn't believe the pivot that I wanted to make. And at the time, I was like, still very like pretty shaky with my conviction around the pivot that I was choosing to make. But at the same time, I was like, no, there's something here. There is something I know I need to explore. I feel such a pull. So I had to like just kind of like come up with like essentially like little like phrases and things that I would say to people when they would like kind of like question. And I didn't have like the deep conviction. But that's the thing is that like when you tell people like I'm making this change or I'm pivoting into this thing and the conviction isn't there, like the body isn't there yet, like they're going to read that energetically.
Yeah.
They're going to read that in your body language and your actual language. So like for me now, like, nobody questions me. Like, they're just like, they're like, oh, you're a coach. And I'm like, yeah. And I was a luxury wedding photographer. Like, they don't question it anymore. So I think like, if you're ever like making a big transition or making a big pivot, just know that like the 3D reality of people like saying like, oh, I could never do that. Or like, oh, you're so brave. Or like, oh, but that's not actually what you're going to do. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't still take the step. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't still pursue the thing you're pursuing. Just know that like their reflection isn't necessarily like anything to do with you.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing as me and my husband have joked about the minute people find out you're pregnant and they're like, oh, well, buckle up. How, what about daycare? What about, and we're like, from this moment forward, we are only accepting positive, feedback. And my husband's actually said that to people too, because, and for me, that just feels like people's own perceptions of motherhood and pregnancy and, parenthood and stuff that they're mirroring to me. And I'm like, nope, I'm taking positive right now. Like, I'm only taking positive. So I think that that's such an important thing to bring up, because my mind also went towards, well, when you're making that pivot and it is scary and you're getting that, feedback from people. And then part of you is like, oh, well, can I do this? Like, can I be convicted in this? Can I make this pivot? That's totally normal. And I think that your subconscious mind wants familiarity. It wants to repeat the pattern of yesterday, tomorrow, and have a predictable future. So I always say that those feelings of discomfort or maybe a little bit of a lack of conviction or confidence or self-trust, whatever, those can be built through time, but they're almost like ascension symptoms. Like when you're super uncomfortable, it's like, yeah, I kind of have to lean into this because like, I know this is right for me and it's super uncomfortable, but it's uncomfortable because my mind and body is like, whoa, that's new. And so that feels unsafe. And so I think really leaning into that too. And when people are saying that, like, notice what comes up for you and then try and challenge it, because it's not true. And obviously now, like you said, you don't really do weddings anymore at all. So, clearly it's worked out for you and you're happy with your decision a couple of years later or 5 years later. So,
Yeah. One thing I will say, if you're listening to this podcast and like you have a friend or someone, even an acquaintance that says like, oh, I'm making a career change, or I'm becoming a mother, or I'm going through surgery, or I'm like doing some big life thing. The phrase I want you to keep in mind is, I love that for you.
Yeah.
Period. They're not asking for advice unless they're asking for advice. They're not asking for your your perception on their life. They are just like telling you information. So like, if you can keep in mind, like I wish, like, honestly, my friends who like they knew like what was going on, all of them were like, I love that for you. And like that, like truly was one of those things that like helped me a lot with my conviction around the decision, because imagine going to like a party and like 10 people tell you like, oh, like, are you sure you want to quit weddings? Are you sure you want to retire? Like, or are you sure about this decision that you're making? It's like, if you have that many people saying that to you, but then you have like people who mean a lot to you saying, I'm so proud of you, I love this for you. That's, I think, like, having people in your life like that it's really, really special when you're going through transition. So I think there's like a piece of like support that we need when we are going through big transitions in our life.
For sure. Just like, I love that for you. That's amazing. Tell me about it. Anything like that that's like support. I love that little insight. So you mentioned the identity shift that you had to make, and you mentioned also that you felt like that was some identity work. What did that look like for you? Because I know you love EFT, and I think you said there was a few other things you do, scripting, visualization, stuff like that. Were those tools you were using during this time period, or was it more like consciously you kind of just had to be like, no, I'm staying convicted in this, I'm making this change?
I feel like I'm the queen of sticky notes, because that was the thing that I did at that time. Like, I literally, if I could turn my camera around, I have 2 different whiteboards, and they are affirmation whiteboards. And then I have my like strategy whiteboard. And like, for me, like the biggest identity work that I did during that time, yes, I did some EFT tapping, and I've been doing EFT tapping probably since like 2020. Yeah, about 2020 was actually when I started doing EFT tapping. I started taking it a lot more seriously in like 2021 when I was going through these really big transitions. And I did quite a bit of like identity work around like the type of person that I was becoming and like what does she care about? Like what are her values? How does she speak to herself? How does she present herself? How does she like hold herself? How does she support herself? Like a lot of those questions were things that I was like kind of like just exploring. Like it wasn't like a one-time thing, like, ta-da, you have a new
Mhm.
identity. Like it definitely was like a day by day kind of thing of like, okay, there is going to come a like nexus point, like an event where I actually am retired and I do my very
Yeah.
last wedding. And on the other side of that, I'm a retired wedding photographer. So who do I want to be before that point as I lead up to that nexus point of July of 2022, my very last wedding? So I think for me, like EFT was one of the biggest, most helpful things. I also think surrounding yourself with the type of people who have the identity that you're headed towards. So I made sure that like most of the conversations I was having on a daily basis were with other coaches or with other people who had made like really big transitions in their life and not wedding photographers who were still at the height of their career and had no plans of retiring. Because imagine the difference between those two
Yeah.
conversations is going to be very different.
Very
So I
different.
think, yeah, I think it's so important to really like surround yourself with people who are doing the thing that you are headed towards doing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for anyone that's listening, and the reason I think this is so prevalent for me right now is I think I already mentioned this, but I did a mindset audit with someone yesterday who was going through something very similar that wants to make pivots. So I know this is very prevalent in my audience right now. But I think it's important to say when I think about the identity shift or subconscious work or just pivots in general, the first thing I think is like your subconscious and your body is so addicted to familiarity. So it's going to want to fight those pivots and it's going to want to fight, well, no, that's my identity. Like, should I stay here? Like, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable. And I think that's the beautiful part of pivots. Like, we can kind of lean into that little bit of discomfort. And I love what you did throughout that time period too, because I think honestly, we should all be doing that every single day where we're just like, okay, well, if, I want to make $20,000 months or I want to do this, like what does that version of me look like? And it's going to look so different from, Sally Sue over there, right? For her, that might be a 5 a.m. ice bath. For you, it just might mean you show up unapologetically in your messaging or your marketing or something like that, right? But I love that because you can kind of start making those small shifts where you're like, okay, well, that version of me would surround herself with like-minded people to normalize this. And that version of me would um, maybe schedule the date of the last wedding or whatever it is. And you can kind of start taking those small action steps. And then it's not as scary because you have this plan. You're like, okay, this is, whatever, like you said, June 2022 is the last date. That's, from that moment forward, I'm that person. And you can even start visualizing that and kind of create some safety there. So I really love all of that.
Yeah, something that came up for me, like as you were speaking, was like, don't be surprised when like you say, I want this thing or I'm becoming this person, and then a shedding or
Oh
like
yeah.
a decluttering happens. Like I've been thinking lately about like, I've been kind of in this season of shedding and this season of these things can't come with me to my next thing. These things are literally slowing me down. They have to get fixed in order for me to get to the next stage that I say that I want, that I'm headed towards, that I'm putting action towards, focus towards, manifestation energy towards. Okay,
Yeah.
we literally have to fix these things or literally have to change or shed these things in order to get there. So I think a lot of times when people are like, oh, I want to make a big transition or a big pivot or whatever, they're like, it's going to be so comfortable. I'm going to feel so empowered. And it's like, guys, like you're gonna have to get used to the discomfort
Yeah.
and not make it mean something about where you're headed. I know Addison, like we talked a little bit about this, that like you've been through like multiple pivots in your life. I cannot tell you how many pivots I've been through in my life. None of them were comfortable.
No.
None of them. Like none of them. And I think that that's like one of those things that if you want to be someone who has a big life and you want to be someone who gets the things that they want, you're gonna have to do things in your life that make you uncomfortable and you feel that discomfort. And you almost have to just make friends with that
Mhm.
discomfort. Be like, hey, hi, nice to see you again. Like, Cool. Okay. Well, you're showing me that we're headed somewhere really cool. That's exciting.
Yeah,
And that's one of the things that helped me a lot was just like when I was going through the discomfort, like realizing that like, oh, this isn't the hardest thing I've ever done, A, but B, this discomfort means something really good because it means that I'm not doing the same thing over and over again.
totally. And I almost think about that identity shift also. You're not like changing who you are. You're not losing who you are in the process. You're shedding, like you said, those small parts of you that can't move forward. And like just to give my audience an example, I know they've heard me tell this story, but I think back to the version of me who was still living in Seattle and was in kind of a toxic relationship. And I knew I had to make the hard choice of leaving that relationship. And most likely it ended up in me leaving Seattle as well too, and moving back to my hometown. And that's where I met my husband. And like, those were hard choices. But in my head, I was literally like, hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life. Like I'm going to continue to
Ooh.
be miserable. And this is a quote like my dad has said to me so many times, but I'm going to continue to be miserable if I don't make these hard choices. It's going to be hard now. It's going to be so uncomfortable now. Is like one of the hardest things I've ever done. I remember sitting in my car with my dog who's sitting back here behind me, like literally sobbing the whole time. Not even because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving this relationship, but I was leaving an old identity of me behind in Seattle. And that led to like all of these beautiful things and like an easy life down the line. So that's what I think about when it comes to identity work or making those shifts to become that person. And so I love everything that you said. Like the shedding is so real. It's not always going to be empowering. It's like a contraction and then you're going to expand. And if you can lean into like, I know this is happening for me for some reason, but I'm not quite sure why, and just make friends with it. I love that. Like you can literally affirm, I'm making friends with this discomfort, and then you're going to be okay on the other side. But yeah.
Yeah. I love that too, because I think that so many people, they're like, oh, this doesn't feel good, so I should stop doing it.
Yeah.
And it's like, hi, like, do you just want to stay the same forever and ever and ever, where you're like, you're not happy with what you're doing? Or do you want to be like proud of yourself? Do you want to be like the person that you say that you want to be? And I can look back to almost every pivot, and I'm sure you have like seasons of this as well. I can look back to every pivot that I've made where it was so difficult, and I am so proud of that version of myself. And I send so much love to that version of myself. And like, I'm sitting in a pivot right now. Like literally these
Yeah.
past 2 weeks have been like a pivot for me identity wise. And I'm like, oh, okay. I get to imagine that my future self is looking back on this little season and is proud of this version of me, which means that I get to be proud of this version of me right now. And I think like whenever you're making those transitions or pivots, like as much as you can, leaning into like, I'm proud of myself for choosing what I'm choosing, because it's so easy to like in life just not choose. It's easier to be like, like life will happen and I don't have to choose. It's like, but the things that you want are on the other side of you choosing to do the things that get you to there.
I agree. Yeah. And I think that change and transformation, I mean, we're entrepreneurs for a reason, so we're okay with discomfort, right? But that change and transformation when you're creating something new in entrepreneurship or life or whatever, like you can't stay the same person. You have to shed certain things. Like it's inevitable. But I know that you help a lot of your clients through that pivot, right? Because a lot of your clients are photographers that are expanding their maybe product suite in some way, or you'll have to tell us a little bit more about that. But I'm curious how you hold clients through that, because I know obviously mentorship and coaching and stuff is great through that because you're not alone, right? If you try and do it alone, it's like, whoa, this is a lot. And that's sometimes where we get stuck. So yeah, I'd love to hear just like, because obviously they all are probably going through that little bit of discomfort. Can I actually do this? Am I good enough to do this? Whatever is coming to mind. And I'm sure that that's something that you help them through. So maybe just tell us a little bit more about that for someone who's in that position right now and is in that discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do help a lot of photographers who like their business is good. They want it to be magical. They want the overflow, the abundance. And that looks different for all of them. I have some clients who they get into corporate work and they're not just doing weddings. I have some clients who we build out like recurring subscription based businesses. Some clients we build out like educational coaching sides of things. And it really is like this, like, it's this conversation around like what happens if you don't do this? Like, what happens if you keep choosing the same, but you still have this desire to do this thing, but you keep choosing to do the same thing?
Yeah.
And so that tends to be a really big conversation that we have. And then the next thing is like, I usually tell them like, it's always mindset, energetics, and then strategy. It's all three. So we usually, like, when they ask me a question or they're like, this fear is coming up or whatever, like we tackle it from all different sides, because sometimes it's literally, they don't know how to send an email.
Yeah.
That's strategy. That's like, I could give you that strategy, but sometimes it's mindset where it's like, I'm afraid that if I change this, my clients are going to be mad at me. My current clients are going to be mad
Yeah.
at me. Okay, that's mindset. We can tackle that. And then sometimes it's energetics where they're like, how do I show up in this way as this new person? How do I show up in this way as this new type of service provider? So it kind of depends on like what they're asking me and like where they are, but like we usually tackle it from all three sides. And a lot of the times I'll usually run them through like some kind of like exercise about like future self, looking back on your current self, kind of like I did a couple minutes
Mm-hmm.
ago. And that truly a lot of times helps them a lot, because they're like, oh, okay, well, in order to get to my future self a year from now, like she has to go through these things in order to get to where she is, which means I have to go through these things. But there's almost like this like sense of safety when you know that your future self has these things. Like there's almost like this sense of safety in the moment to take the action, because you're like, oh, okay, well, she's done it, so I can do it. Which I don't know if that's like the most like subconscious reprogramming way to do it, but that really has helped like almost put on a different perspective and a different hat for my clients. But yeah, I mean, we talk about identity work all the time, like inside of my programs.
Yeah, actually, I think it is. And the reason I say that is, especially if you're having them visualize, your mind doesn't differentiate thought from reality. So when you are visualizing and creating, you're almost like mentally rehearsing a future. It makes taking the action there that much safer and easier for people, because my dog's groaning if you hear him in the background, because they're basically like, oh, that's already happened. Like my mind and body think that's already happened. So I can get there and do it. So I really like that. And I like the conversation of like all three of those areas too, because you're right. Like I've had people come to me that think it's a mindset issue. And then when we get down to it, it's like, oh, you really just need someone to help you kind of map out your next step. And that would help you feel safe. Or you just need someone to say like, yes, create a mastermind. And that will be, your next step. And then you feel safe. And it's less about you're not willing to do those things, or that there's a mindset piece behind the scenes. It's really just, needing someone to kind of give you that direction moving forward. So I also didn't realize with your clients that they were all across the board. Like you're not just doing pivoting into education, right? Like there's corporate contracts, which are huge and stuff like that. So that's really awesome. Do you have like I don't know, an example of like an identity shift or something that a client made that people can resonate with if they're sitting in this and they're like, I'm in that place right now and I know I need to make this happen, but maybe something that just is like inspiring for people to listen to?
Yeah. So I had a client so I do work with a lot of different types of clients. It just kind of depends on the program.
Yeah.
So I had a client who started with me back in 2023. So she's been with me for multiple years at this point. At the time when she hired me, she was a wedding photographer and she was charging between like 3 to 4K for wedding photography, which is like kind of in the like more like budget side of
Yeah.
wedding photography. Just to give an example, I was charging like 10 to 17K and I was in the luxury bracket like several years ago in wedding photography. So when she came to me, she was charging 3 to 4K. She didn't really have anything other than weddings as her revenue streams. Over the course of several years inside of my programs, she has added on corporate work. She has added on branding work. She's added on coaching. She has a course now. She also has added on weddings have gotten a lot larger like for her, and like her prices have gone up by like I think double at this point, which is pretty cool. But recently she's now in my mastermind. Recently she was sending out a corporate proposal to a like it was an event for a weekend where people were coming into her town and then she would be photographing them throughout the entire weekend. And when she initially got the inquiry for it, she was like, oh, I'm going to charge what I would have charged back in 2023, like 3 years ago at this point. And I was like, no. We are not charging hourly for this. This is a corporate event that they're spending probably $200,000 to $400,000 on this event this weekend. You cannot charge hourly for it.
Yeah.
And so I was like reminding her of the new identity she has of, this is okay to send a 5-figure proposal to these people. They're not going to blink an eye at it. But she had never she had stepped into that identity kind of recently, but it was still kind of shaky and new. So this is like her third person that she's like sent out like 5-figure proposals to. And she's like still is like kind of getting into this like space of like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I am equipped to do this. Oh, I am the person to do this. And so what I would say to anyone who's like, in the spot where you're like, okay, I know that there's more out there for me. I know that I could be doing something bigger. It's not that you're like unequipped, and it's not that you don't have the mindset for it or you don't have the strategy or like the talent or anything for it. It's that you have to shift into the person who that is like an of course option for. And that honestly, I would say like takes a lot of like support and mentorship to get to that point, as well as like the internal work that we do for ourselves. But I think the biggest thing I would say is like, where she was when she started with me is not where she is now, but it took a lot of work of her getting to a point where she was like, this is something that I'm allowed to do. I'm allowed to send out this large of a proposal. So I would ask you, where are you not allowing yourself to go bigger would be the biggest thing there.
Yeah, I love that. I've actually asked my clients before in similar situations with pricing where I'm like, okay, how would, multiple 6-figure insert name show up in this scenario? And they're like, oh yeah, I wouldn't still charge $3,000 for this. I'd charge $8,000 or whatever. So it's like feeling grounded in that new role, which takes time, trusting that people will pay those higher prices, which again takes time. And then the identity shifts, right? And then I think also just like building that safety with yourself, which all of those things take time. And I don't think that self-trust is just something that you have one day. You know what I mean? It's something that's built over time. And in that case, it seems like she really built that over time, but there's still that guidance of like, girl, don't play small. You know what I mean? I think that's like such an important piece of mentorship. So I love that.
Yeah. And I think it's like, I think we have these like really lofty ideas of like, oh, when I'm, making 30K months or like 100K months or whatever, or like, it doesn't even have to be money related. When I'm over there, I will act a certain way and I will never doubt myself.
Yeah, totally.
And I can tell you, like, that is so absolutely not the truth. The truth is, like, you might still doubt yourself, but you will have built up the self-trust that the self-doubt isn't going to last very long.
Yeah.
Or you have a mentor that you can go to and be like, hey, I'm self-doubting. Can you help out?
For sure. And I like the idea too of even thinking about your journey or my pivots that I've made. It's starting small and then expanding. You're not just like, hey, tomorrow is my last wedding. You have this thought and you're like, tomorrow's my last wedding. I'm done. Then I'm releasing the identity. Like it does feel like it was this gradual transition where you did the 70 whatever coffee chats, realized you loved it. And then you still gave yourself some time in that too. So I think it's okay, for anyone that's listening to this, you don't have to do it overnight. There can be small shifts. Even when I went from, just business coaching to adding in hypnotherapy, it was like it started with a freebie and then it started with one-off sessions. And then from there, it went into longer containers. Like it's okay to build upon things and then reframe, any fear that you're feeling throughout that process as growth. Like, again, almost as if I already saw myself as this version of me that's super successful in this area. How would I show up today? But how can I take like one small step in that regard? Because I think that builds safety too. And like you said with your client, it's been years of getting to that point. And now she probably had like, the highest event she's ever done or the largest event she's ever done, which is incredible. But it wasn't an overnight thing. It was a gradual shift in mentorship and small changes along the way. And then she probably looks back and she's like, oh my gosh, like, look at where I'm at, right?
Yeah, we had a nice little party for her.
Oh, nice. Good.
when she booked it. But yeah, I think there's also like something to be said about inside of the coaching industry. There's a lot of people who talk about quantum leaps and they talk about like, oh, like going from like 10K months to 100K months, like really quickly. And I think there's a lot of like beauty in that, but I think that there's a lot of unsafety that happens in that. So if you're someone who like has really big dreams to go from whatever you're making right now to like 10 times your income. I love that dream for you. Make sure you have the safety and the support that needs to happen so that when you have that 100K month after making 10K months for a really long time, when you have that 100K month, you're not just like, your entire body and nervous system is just like short circuiting. Because I see that happen quite often where people will go from like, okay, one identity to a new identity, and they're like, oh no, like this doesn't feel comfortable at all, and they sabotage. So I think it's important to have that support as well.
Yeah, and they unconsciously sabotage too. A lot of times they don't know they're doing it, but then their income, drops down again, or they fall off the face of the planet. They can't get themselves to show up on Instagram. Like, we kind of know what those those signs are, but I think that's huge. And that's a realization too that I had recently. I actually said in a recent podcast episode that I think a lot of us, this is our life's work. Like, we can't imagine doing anything else. Maybe there are small pivots along the way that we'll make to become more aligned. But what is the rush if we plan on being in this forever? You know what I mean? And I think that sometimes that helps people surrender a little bit. They're like, okay, well, I can be happy now because I've created so much already. So I love that. You mentioned that you're in a pivot right now. So how are you like holding yourself through it? Or not a pivot, but a transition, an identity shift. How are you holding yourself through it?
Yeah. So I recently have been having a lot of hip pain, like just kind of like as I'm walking, my hip will click. And apparently that's not normal. I had kind of convinced myself after a while that this was just like, oh, this is how my body works. Like this is your 30s. Like, I don't know. Like, I just had convinced myself it wasn't a big deal. And so recently I had x-rays and MRIs done, and it looks like I'll probably be having hip surgery in the next like probably month or so. And so as soon as I found out that it might even be a possibility that I would be having hip surgery, I was like, okay, I am going to have to do business differently. And I don't want to just like dip out and like not like, support my clients. I don't want to have an income dip. Like I am choosing to do this in the way that I want to do it, which means that I have to prep for the identity shift. So there's going to be a nexus point. We talked about this. There's going to be an event, and the event is the hip surgery. Who am I being before the hip surgery? Who am I going to be after? If I know that the person after the hip surgery is going to have less on her plate, but is still making the same income or more that she wants to, what do I need to do right now up until the surgery to make that like a reality and to have that identity? And I think there's going to be a lot of lessons that I'm going to learn over the next like month or so around like receiving energy and around like the feminine energy, and just like literally having to be taken care of. I think that's going to be a really interesting shift for me. But I know that this is also going to make me a better business owner, and it's going to allow me to do things differently in my business that I currently think I have to do a certain way because that's how I've been doing it. So that's like kind of like where I'm at. And I think it's just like a really interesting, like, I don't know, being a coach makes you so introspective.
Yeah,
of how
100%.
things happening. So I feel like this is just like such a, like, it's such an interesting thing to go to, knowing the things that I know around like subconscious reprogramming, around identity work, and around like running a business that feels really good.
Yeah, I almost did the exact same thing with my pregnancy too. I had a little bit more time than you did, a little bit more than a month, but still in my head prior to finding out I was going to spend this whole year prepping my business and then the universe, of course, was just like, no, this is the right time. You're going to do this a lot faster than you thought, which I'm here for it. And my thought process throughout the whole thing was like almost the same as yours. There's a reason that, this is perfect timing. And also like right now I might be working a little bit more than I'm going to be able to when I have a little baby. And so really for me, it was like leaning into that spaciousness that I've created, not filling my time with like random tasks or extra things or like, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, I've created the foundation in my business the last 5 months. The last 5 years, can I just sit in that? And so there is an identity piece where you are slowly like, okay, this new version of me is going to be my time's going to be taken up by healing or by, taking care of a child or by whatever you're going through in life. And there's always going to be something. That's the other thing I've realized too, is life is always going to life. So I think it's important to realize that and then just always be acting in accordance, like in your business in that way. You know what I mean? Like you're never just going to have a time where things are just normal and easy. Something's going to come up, or you know what I mean? Like you're going to learn something. There's going to be a lesson. And I think that's just part of life, and it's beautiful, and we get to hold it all. So I love all of that. And best of luck on your surgery too.
Thank you. I think one of the things that I would say to anyone listening to this podcast episode who might be like coming up on a pivot or transition, or like you're in one right now, watching other people go through life transitions at a high level who held themselves in a really beautiful way, or held themselves to like in a way that like was how I would want to do it, was really helpful for me.
Yeah.
So like I've been in high level masterminds. I've had mentors over the years. I've watched different people go through different life events, and watching them and how they prep their business, but also how they prep their mindset and how they prep like their clients, has really helped me to have a lot more like certainty around like my business is going to be fine. My clients are going to be fine. Like my income is going to be fine. And all of those, it can be fine as the base level. I want to come back better. Like I want my business, my clients, like my income to be better after this surgery. So I think it's like really important to have good models of people doing pivots and transitions well, so that like inevitably when life is lifing and you have to do like something completely different, it's like a big shift for you. You've seen it done in a way that you're like, oh, she was fine. I can be fine. She's done it. I can do it.
Yeah, I agree. And the reality is too, like with your clients and the surgery and stuff, all of them are going to be like, oh my gosh, go take care of yourself. Like, don't even worry about me. Like we're the ones that are feeling the fear, but our clients 99% of the time we're going to be like, and I'd argue that 1% they're not an ideal client, but they're going to be like, go take care of you, do whatever you need to do. Like, I'll see you when you get back. And I think that remembering that always helps me too. So
yeah. And I would say like, I personally, as a client, really prefer when my mentors and like my, like the people that I'm like buying from, like masterminds and stuff, I really prefer it when they're transparent. Like, I would rather like my clients know that I'm going through surgery and know what's coming up than find out after I've had it and I'm in recovery. Like, I would rather them like know and have like prep time. So like if you're currently going through a transition, you're about to go through a transition, there might be 1% of your clients that are like, oh no, like please don't take care of yourself. There might be those people, but also like most of your clients are going to be really grateful that you gave them the information ahead of time and didn't like blindside them.
And it almost gives other people permission to set those boundaries and stuff in their business. I know for me, I always feel empowered when I see a mentor or whatever hold a boundary or make a pivot or do something, and I'm like, oh, that just kind of gave me permission to do this too. So I love that. Well, do you have any last little insights around like identity shifts or pivots or anything that you're like really wanting to share? I know you shared some really powerful little thoughts throughout, but anything that like comes to mind to wrap all of this up, since you're currently in a pivot too? Any wisdom you want to impart?
Yeah, I would say lean into the support and tools that you already know work for you. So like lately I've been waking up and I have an app that has like visualizations and EFT on it. And so every single morning I wake up at like 5 something and I turn on my visualization and I fall back asleep to it. And then I wake up at 6 o'clock. So I've already like listened to my visualization like before I ever am like really conscious. So it's something that I've been doing for myself, and then EFT as well. So if you are currently going through a pivot, just lean into the tools that you already know work for you, or go ahead and start exploring tools. This is like a good time to like test them out for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And it's totally okay to be in a position of like fear or scarcity or whatever, and then lean on like what is going to help me feel a little bit better, like those tools. And I think we can both say too that business is a lot of mindset. So definitely lean on the mindset too. Don't just go like, oh, like all my strategy, I got to tweak all my strategy, because like you said, there might be tools or foundations in your business that are already set that don't need to be shifted much, right? So I love that.
Yeah. And just like recognize that some of the biggest things that will happen in your life will come from transitions in the best way possible.
Mhm.
Like I am who I am now in 2025 because of the pivots that I made every single year that I've had a pivot. Like I am the person that I am because of how I held myself through those. And I'm freaking grateful. Like I love who I am in 2025. I love the things that I do for myself, the way that I think for myself. If I had not gone through those transitions or I had held myself back, I wouldn't be where I am today.
For sure. Yes, 100% necessary for the change that we're desiring. Well, I've loved all of this. And I want to hear about your Expand Your Mindset membership too. I think that could be super supportive for people who are in that place right now. So I would love if you just tell us a little bit about that and how people can find that or find you.
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Instagram at Aislinn Eileen Coaching. So that is where I primarily live and breathe and hang out all the time. So you can find me there. And then the Expand Your Mindset membership is a 6-month membership. And there's 6 months or 12 months. And it's a space where every single week you're going to hear riffs on mindset. I'm going to give you guys different exercises. Every single quarter, we have either a workshop or a challenge for you to go through on different like mindset things. And then you are also able to do a weekly Q&A thread where if you have a mindset question or something that you're going through that you need like support around as far as riffs and mindset, you can add it to the thread and then answer it throughout the week. I mostly work with wedding professionals, but I do work with creatives as well. So if you're a service provider or you're a coach, Expand Your Mindset still is a really great space for you. And you can find that on my website at aislinneileen.com or find me on Instagram.
Awesome. And I'll link all of those below too, so people can really easily find your Instagram and your website and stuff in that membership. So that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I've loved this conversation. I feel like it's going to be so helpful for someone who's like, this is so uncomfortable, but I know I have to do it right now. You know what I mean? So I've
Yeah.
loved it.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm so glad that our lessons that we're currently learning could be like a beautiful podcast episode for other people to learn from as well.
100%.